Hi everyone, let's press on into section 4 of chapter 3. We're still going to be solving inequalities, this time doing multi-step processes. The big thing here that you have to always watch out for is if you have to multiply or divide by a negative. Alrighty? So let's just remind ourselves, like we did in chapter 2, exactly what has to happen when we're solving equations and inequalities, really the steps that we're after here. Okay, the very first thing is you have to find and locate that variable, which means, is it on the left, is it on the right, just so you know where it is. And especially if there's more than one variable on each side, make sure you're doing some combining of like terms. Get the variable alone. That means isolate it by undoing whatever you need to do. First of all, you might need to do some simplifying or combining terms. You might have to use the distributive property. But the big thing is you need to get the variable on one side of your inequality symbol. And then finally, work at undoing everything to solve, making sure you keep track of what's legal properties. And of course, then check your answer to see if it makes sense. So let's start with, we're going to do about 5 or 6 examples and power through things and go from there. So write down this first one. 45 plus 2b is greater than 61. I look at this and I say, all right, there's my variable. I want to isolate that. First, let's get rid of the 45, which is positive. So I'm going to subtract it from each side of my inequality symbol. That goes to 0. So you're left with 2b is greater than, and it looks like this will be 16. Oh, this is so nice. Being too easy on you here. Divide both sides by 2, which leaves you with 1b, which is exactly what we wanted. And you get positive 8. Notice I did not have to worry anything about flipping my inequality symbol because I was dividing by a positive number. Now the directions did say please graph your solutions. You're probably getting super sick of this by now. Again, show me where 0 is. Show me where 8 is. I'm not going to be concerned that you show me 7 little hash marks in between. Put a circle at 8 because that's your significant number, or your starting point. It remains open because I don't have an equal sign, and shade to the right, greater than. Okay, let's try another one. Put a little squiggle line there. Take this one. 8 minus 3y is greater than or equal to 29. I'm actually going to show you 2 ways to do this, and then you decide which way you like best. Okay? The first way would be where I'm going to take 8 minus 3y greater than or equal to 29. I'm going to look at 8. Right now 8 is positive. I'm going to subtract 8 from each side because my goal is to get this y by itself. The kicker here, this is a minus 3 or a negative 3y. That's what I want you to think of this as. The 8 is positive. That's why we're subtracting. That goes to 0. You still have negative 3y greater than or equal to 21. Now, before you get super excited over the fact that 3 goes into 21 perfectly, I need you to keep track of this negative sign. I'm going to divide. I'm going to divide by negative 3 because my goal is to get a positive 1y. On the right-hand side, yes, you get negative 7. However, when you divide by a negative, you must remember that you need to invert or flip the inequality symbol. And here's where you land. Y is less than or equal to negative 7. Now, I want to show you method 2 in case you like this way better. And here's why. If this whole negative business gets you messed up and you are worried that you're going to forget about inverting your symbol or something like that, you could do this. You could say, you know what, I don't like this negative 3y, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3y to each side instead. What that does is this is the exact opposite of this term, and that goes to 0, and you're left with 8. On this side, I happen to now have my variable on the right, which is no big deal. you will work to isolate your variable by subtracting 29. That goes to 0. And you end up with this relationship. On the left side, I have negative 21. Oops, sorry, switch color on you there. All right, now divide both sides by 3. Divide by 3, divide by 3. This gives me 1y, perfect. I don't have to do any inverting here. Just realize what's happening is that your inequality with the variable on the right looks different because we need to rewrite it this way in order to make it look right with the variable on the left side. You can leave it this way, it's perfectly fine. I didn't have to do any flipping. What I did was I added 3y and it shows up on the right hand side instead. Hey, we still need to graph this thing, okay? Here's 0. Here is negative 7 somewhere down to the left. This time you'll put a solid dot at negative 7, shade to the left. Please fill in the arrowhead to indicate that it continues on into infinity. All right, let's do one like this with a ginormous fraction. You have the whole quantity x plus 5 over negative 2 is greater than 3. Even though it's not written with parentheses, those parentheses are implied there, okay? That means that both of these terms up here, the x and the 5, are kind of locked or trapped by this denominator. The first thing you should do is clear the denominator out of here. And you're going to do that by multiplying both sides by the denominator, which is negative 2. Whoa, it's negative. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remember, ooh, I have to flip my inequality because I multiplied by a negative. On the right, I get negative 6. On the left, this clears the denominator out of there, and now I simply have what was in my numerator to begin with, x plus 5. Now subtract 5 from each side. That goes to 0. No flipping now. And this is negative 11. X is less than negative 11. Go ahead and sketch the graph so that you get a good idea of what your solution set is. This time, please have an open circle at negative 11, since I do not have an equal sign, and shade in the arrowhead. Now what about this one? I have negative 4 times the quantity 2 minus x is less than or equal to 8. What I would recommend here is go ahead and distribute. My recommendation here is to distribute here first, okay? So take negative 4 times 2. That's negative 8. Take negative 4 times this, and I want you to think of that as like negative 1x. So this becomes plus 4x is less than or equal to 8. Hey, don't let your eyeballs do anything crazy here, like Speedy Sally would, thinking this is going to be a 0. Next, I need you to start working at isolating x. First, add 8 to each side, because this guy's negative. You want that to go to 0. Do the same thing over here. Add 8. That gives you 4x less than or equal to 16. Sweet. They're giving you nice numbers here, so you ought to be jumping up and down and doing a happy algebra dance that your numbers are so nice. 16 over 4 is 4. X is less than or equal to 4. Your solutions look like this on a graph. Here's 0. Here's positive 4. Fill in the circle because it includes it with that equal sign, and it's less than, so please shade to the left and be sure to fill in the arrowhead. The big thing here is you're going to get some word problems once in a while, and so let's take a look at one. It says to rent a certain vehicle, Rent-A-Ride charges $55 a day with unlimited miles. The cost of renting a similar vehicle at We Got Wheels is $38 a day plus 20 cents per mile. So see your two situations here. One of them costs more, $55 a day, but you get unlimited miles versus $38 a day and 20 cents a mile. So it's saying for what number of miles in the cost at Rent-A-Ride is this is what that should say, is the cost of Rent-A-Ride less than the cost of We Got Wheels. Okay, you're going to have to pick a variable to represent miles, so let's be obvious here and use M. And then it says Rent-A-Ride has to be less than We Got Wheels. So let's just start here. I'm thinking Rent-A-Ride and We Got Wheels. All right, now go back up to your information here. Rent-A-Ride was $55. It's a set fee, no matter what. And we're asking, when is Rent-A-Ride less than We Got Wheels? We Got Wheels charges you $38 plus 20 cents for every mile. Okay, now go ahead and simply crank things on out. So isolate your variable. First thing we're going to do is subtract 38. That goes to 0. This leaves me with about 17, I believe. Then go ahead and to get m by itself, we're going to divide by 0.20, divide by 0.20. That goes to 1. So I get m on this side, m's on the right. That bugs me a little bit, just to let you know, but that's okay. And I believe when you do this math, you should get 85. Okay, now, right now, I have an issue here in that this is written with the variable on the right. So you know me, I always have to rewrite it. Open end is facing towards the variable. Here we go. M has to be greater than 85. So what this says, it says for what number of miles is the cost to Rent-A-Ride less? It's going to be it's when the miles are 86 miles or more. So Rent-A-Ride is less. Rent-A-Ride is less for 80. Now, we could say for more than 85 miles. At 85 miles, it's going to be exactly equal. So we'll say more than 85 miles. Or you could, I suppose, say 86 miles or more. And that's how that one goes. All right. What I want you to do next is, will you grab your workbook? We're going to do a couple of these together. And just to make sure you've got it solid. Okay. So find this page 3-4 in your workbook, and let's just do these first few here together. I know it doesn't give you a ton of room here to show your work, so practice writing pretty tiny. Subtract 10 from each side. Yay, hooray. Those are opposites and they go away. And you get negative 3a is less than negative 21. The next thing you're going to do is divide, because we're trying to isolate the variable a. Whoa! When I divide by this negative, I have to make sure that we're flipping. And so I'm going to get a. I have to flip the inequality to be greater than, and this becomes positive 7. Put an open circle here. Now on here, it's going to be a little more difficult to show your shading on top of here. So I kind of just put a squiggle line on top. A is greater than 7. Number 2, 4x minus 12. Let's add 12, add 12. Yay, hooray, that goes away. I end up with 4x is greater than or equal to 32. Then I'm going to divide by 4 on each side. 4 over 4 is 1. That's exactly what I wanted, is a coefficient of 1. Don't flip this one. We were dividing by a positive. X is greater than or equal to 8. So put a solid dot, and again, we're going to the right. Make the arrowhead very pronounced so we can see that it's that way. Number 3. Ooh, look at this one. This will be fun. When you see a big fraction like this with more than one term, those two things are trapped or locked by that denominator of negative 5. So what I want you to do is multiply both sides by negative 5. multiply this side by negative 5. This clears the denominator. Yay. So I just have 2k minus 3 now. On the right-hand side, I have negative 35. But when I've done that, I multiplied by a negative, and you need to flip that inequality symbol to now be less than. Now we're cooking. Here's my variable k. Let's isolate it by first adding 3 to each side. Whew. That goes to 0. This becomes negative 32, and then I have to divide by 2. I don't have to invert or flip my inequality again. This gives me negative 16. Alrighty, k is less than negative 16. Let's put an open circle here. Less than, whoops, means you're going to the left, so I'm just going to kind of shade in my number line and put a pronounced arrowhead there to indicate that I'm going to the left. All right, this last one here, gosh, there are a lot of ways to combat this one. What I would recommend, gosh, I don't know, some people want to clear the denominator right away. You could multiply everything by 15, or you could get everything to be a common denominator. I think a common denominator might, first of all, help you see what happens when you're going to clear it. So let's just say I change everything to 15ths. That becomes negative 3/15 times z. This would be 10/15, and then this would be how many 15ths? Oh, I'll think about that. I guess that'd be 30/15. Now when you clear the denominator, basically what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to multiply both sides by 15. I'm going to multiply this side by 15. Because I have more than one term, you have to distribute. You end up with negative 3z. Now the denominator's gone. Yay. Plus 15 times 10 over 15. That's just 10. Cleared the denominator. On this side, you just end up with 30. That, I think, for most people is a little easier to deal with. All right, subtract 10 from each side. I'm working now to isolate the variable z. That goes away. I get 20. Now don't panic. Yes, we're going to get a fractional answer, but we've got a lot of stuff going on here. You have to divide by negative 3. And so you're going to say to yourself, whoa, I got to flip that inequality here because I'm dividing by a negative. So it's going to be greater than or equal to. That becomes a 1, a 1z. That's exactly what I want. And this becomes 20 over negative 3, which basically is like negative 20/3. Now, we think about this. It's kind of a dead giveaway here when they put in negative 6 2/3, because that's what negative 20/3 is equal to. So negative 6 2/3. It's a greater than or equal to symbol, so we're going to put a solid dot there. And because it's greater than, we're going to go ahead and fill in the arrow here. Awesome. All right, I'm calling that good. There's a lot more in the workbook. You've had plenty of practice now with your notes and these 4 examples. Show me that you did those 4 in the workbook, and I'll check that off in the gradebook, and then you can be turned loose to start on this assignment, page 191 to 193. Good luck.